Okay. So I'm going to read your bio. We'll start there, right?
Okay.
Are we going to do intro then prayer? So we keep saying that we need to do a pre-recorded intro because we always get into it like, what are we talking about today? And then we go on 5 minutes talking about the topic, and then one of us goes, welcome to Catholic Guardians. And then we do
So it's prayer first, then intro?
intro then prayer.
This is so
I swear we're like
professional.
We are professionals.
It gets worse every week too.
All right. Prayer first and then intro. Because we
Okay.
do prayer, what we're doing, banter, start.
Okay.
Ready?
All right.
All right. Name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy
Holy
Spirit.
Spirit,
Amen.
amen.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
All right. So, welcome to Catholic Guardians, an unapologetically masculine podcast for Catholic men and by Catholic
men.
Yeah, but not by as in like by. And together we will return to tradition. So today, I'm so excited. This has been like 5 months in the work. Yeah.
It has.
Like I'm a
It
slacker.
has. I've been trying to avoid you.
Yeah. Rightly.
I mean, I heard
As
this
you
is the He-Man Women Hating Club. Is it?
Obviously.
Well, I mean, we are Catholic, so
Obviously.
right?
Yeah.
I know.
You
I'm
should
a
be
little-
so lucky that we even let you grace the bottom barrel of a podcast that we are. 'Cause,
I don't
mean,
think I'm ever going to get over this.
Well, I don't
It's a
think
true
anybody,
honor.
I don't think anybody's going to let you. So, Melissa Clement.
Yes.
I don't want to hose it. All right. So, Melissa Clement, you are currently the president of the Nevada Right to Life.
hmm
Is it Right to Life chapter? Right to Life?
No,
just
we
Right to
in
Life?
Nevada Right to Life. It's the statewide affiliate of National Right to Life Committee.
And you're on the board of directors for the.
National Right to Life Committee.
So cool.
It is pretty cool.
So-
I have to say.
I have to tell you. So, I don't know if I told you this. You've been saved in my phone as Melissa Pro Life Superhero
Oh, that's awesome.
for like 2.5 years.
And
now.
when we would drop the last podcast, we were talking about what we were going to be doing next and referred to you as the pro-life superhero coming
Oh,
on the
man.
podcast.
Because you are.
Had I known, I would have worn my cape.
It's okay.
That's awfully nice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you don't
And-
have to. You don't have to wait too long because soon Pope Francis is going to let women be priests anyway, and you could just wear a vestment.
Well,
You don't even need a cape.
I'm just going to go to the Amazon. I don't even really know what's going on there, but I hear it's going to be awesome.
It's going to be great. So today we're talking about pro-life issues, and a lot of Catholics get the whole concept of the pro-life movement misconstrued with the anti-abortion movement. They both go hand in hand,
hmm
but they're not exactly the same movement, right?
Well, and then you throw in the whole life movement. Too.
Exactly. Yeah. 'Cause
So-
that's what I was thinking. Like pro-life is not just anti-abortion or pro don't kill babies. It's pro don't kill babies, pro don't kill yourself, pro don't kill people who are sick, pro don't just get rid of
Absolutely.
people because they're elderly or they're disenfranchised or they're poor or they're sick or I mean what was it? What's that that it's it's a European country that cured Down syndrome because they just
Sweden.
Oh,
It was
yeah, it
Sweden.
was Sweden.
They're this close to curing Down syndrome and
By
it's
aborting everybody.
Yeah, it's horrifying.
Yeah,
and we had that-
absolutely.
We had that lovely speaker last year at the pro-life dinner, and
Right.
she swam the English Channel.
She is, and I always have a hard time. Is it swam?
Swam.
She swam. Yeah, I'm sorry, Mrs. Lee is
Whatever.
my English teacher.
We ain't no grammarologists.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah, thank God.
She has swum at several. Swam at several.
We haven't been drinking, I swear.
It's water. Yeah, so she was amazing.
She really was.
Absolutely amazing. Karen Gaffney.
Yeah.
And talk about a pro-life hero. She's an adult Down syndrome person
Mhm.
that has a PhD. She has a very full life
Mhm.
as an adult, lives by herself, has a job, and then speaks all over the
Mhm.
country. She is phenomenal.
Yeah.
It was so powerful because when we get more into some of these pro-life things, there's a lot of people that say, well, unless you are this or unless you have this then you have nothing to say about it. And so then you have somebody who actually has this
Mhm.
quote unquote disability. And when she got up there and said, there are people that are saying my life is not worth living, and then she goes over all of her accomplishments, I was sitting in the audience crying with my wife because it was just so incredibly powerful.
Absolutely.
Like, this is somebody who would, like, if it were me, I would be getting screamed at and shut down in a conversation. But now you have somebody who's like, all right, shut me down.
Right.
What are you going to say?
Exactly. That was a powerful night. Absolutely.
Yeah, it was really impressive. That what I like about the pro-life movement is that it kind of branches beyond like a singular religious affiliation. Right?
Absolutely.
So it's not just like only Catholics are pro-life, or only Christians are pro-life, or only Mormons, or Jehovah's Witnesses, or any of it. That you have this like gigantic movement, and what I really love is like the left. Politically speaking, the left is kind of, there are the people that are more like center left that are kind of abandoning this full steam movement towards infanticide. We're not even
Absolutely.
we're not talking abortion anymore. We're talking infanticide and then homicide, because we're talking about willingly taking away the life of people who are no longer deemed valuable to society, or they cost too much. As we move closer to single payer,
Exactly.
I mean, what it was? There was 3 children in England, 2 or 3 kids in England that were put down by the state because they were costing them too much money. As
That just sounds so awful as well. Put down, like, that's what you do to a dog.
yeah, well, that's
Right.
exactly what it is.
Well,
It's
and
like,
I can't tell you how many people have said, well, we do it to our dogs. We love our dogs. Why wouldn't we do this to grandma?
Mhm.
Why wouldn't we do this to
It's
my
more
older brother?
humane. It's kinder.
Exactly.
They don't
Who'd
have-
want to
they-
live that way?
They don't have to suffer.
it's
Absolutely.
and again, I always like to play the super antagonist.
Mhm.
So I love when I get into a pro-life conversation with somebody who's vehemently anti-life.
Right.
I ask at what point I can start killing people that I just don't like, because there really are no more lines. And I mean, there's the SLED version of apologetics for the pro-life movement, which I absolutely love.
Absolutely.
But they're beyond all of that. They're like, it simply comes down to desire and convenience.
It's absolutely what's most convenient for me.
Yeah.
And so then you have a society that's built on the biggest bully.
Yeah.
The biggest bully decides who lives and who dies.
It's a completely subjective value decision, and that decision is, well, this life is not worth living. You and I talked about it a little while ago when we were talking about like the increase in mass shootings. To me, it makes a little bit of sense, because you have people that are now going out there and making that subjective value decision on whether a life is worth living or not.
Right.
And we do that so callously with, over 2 million babies per year. But now this person has just decided, oh, well, I'm just going to take it to the next level. And then we get all up in arms about that. But we don't have that same level when we
Right.
clear out an abortuary dumpster.
We send a terrible message to our kids. Could you imagine growing up now? Because on one hand, they're getting so many messages, and one of them definitely is that the value of life depends on who you are and how valuable you are to the person who's making the
Like,
decision.
what can you do for me?
Right.
Yep.
Exactly.
So before we just go total pro-life tangent, because we're going to be there forever,
Yeah.
I want to start kind of hitting some things that are important. It will start with what's closest in our community, and then we'll kind of move out into a national perspective.
Okay.
So we live in Nevada. Everybody knows that. And if you haven't figured that out by now, you're an idiot. So
Best place in the union.
it is.
It is.
It's
That
quickly.
doesn't mean you should move here, though.
Yeah,
It's
please don't.
like-
Especially if you live in California, don't move here.
It's terrible.
We're tired of your voting.
You should stay
Yeah, we own guns.
for now.
Nevada just went blue. We were red, and then we
Yes.
were purple, and now
Yes.
we're blue. We're dyed in the blue. Like, we are.
We are blue for now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hopefully, we can turn that around.
Absolutely.
But now that we lost both houses of the legislature and the governor's mansion
Mhm.
to the other side, it's been a garbage dump of legislation against
Absolutely.
all forms of life, starting at conception, leading all the way through to natural
To a
death.
very unnatural death.
Well, that's like,
where,
yeah,
that's
so
where
like,
we're headed. Yeah.
we have Conception to natural death is what we like.
What we like.
Don't interfere with it at either end.
Or along the way.
But they're starting with legislation that's crushing through all of it. So is there, from just like a voter perspective, what is some of the legislation that you're seeing here in Nevada? Because what starts on the west kind of just like floods east.
Absolutely.
It's like it starts in the coast and then it just kind of like crushes inwards.
Absolutely.
So you had New York did the whole like you can kill it all the way up until the moment of its birth.
Mm-hmm.
And then you didn't have to perform life-saving measures if the abortion had gone wrong.
Absolutely.
And then they criminalized, or I don't know the exact terminology, I'm sure you would. When you assault a woman who's pregnant and it ends in the death of her unborn child, that is no longer an additional crime.
Correct. Yeah.
So
they removed the penalty.
Thank you. That's it.
Yeah. Which in effect decriminalizes.
Yeah. Yep. So what are we looking at that starts out in California and New York that's flooding into is what, I mean, we saw it in the Trump election. It's a sea of red in the middle.
Right.
Right. I mean, it really is. But as people start moving away from, obviously, the turd holes that they've created, but they start legislating that along the way. And we used to be a pretty pro-life state, and now we're seeing a lot of directions against it. Or have we not been a pro-life state?
So we've never really been a pro-life state. Unfortunately, back years ago, back in the early 70s, before Roe v. Wade, we were actually making some progress. I was not involved. But we were headed towards being a pro-life state. Mm-hmm. And then Roe v. Wade happened overnight. It was like they were planning it, and they came into all of the states and, basically they threw the tables up. Mm-hmm. And everything was up in the air for a while. Back in 91, there was a question that was on the ballot, or 1990, the question 7, and it froze into law our very liberal law, which basically the only requirements in Nevada is that an abortion must be done by a doctor. And after 24 weeks, it has to be done in a hospital. But other than that, everything's kind of up in the air.
That seems really progressive compared to what I'm seeing.
Yeah, it's really, we are.
That is really.
Absolutely. And before this legislative session, we were the 6th most pro-abortion state.
Do you think that has something to do with the fact that we've got the legalized prostitution in our state, that sex trafficking? Because I know sex trafficking is a gigantic issue for our state.
Absolutely.
Do you think the two go hand in hand?
I think so, although there's never been...
who's going to study that?
Yeah, absolutely.
That puts dirt in everybody's face.
Yeah, and I've always heard from people outside the state that say that it's casinos. They don't want this to be anything but the way it is. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't know that that's the case. That's coming from people who are not here.
Mm-hmm. I just know, like, from an outsider's perspective, especially when we moved from California, the idea of Nevada is still pretty much like the Wild West, where this is where you go to escape from regular societal norms when it comes to gambling and prostitution.
Absolutely.
So to me, when we were moving here, it doesn't like it would then make sense that it's pretty much the state of vice, where anything that you want to do, you can do. So I think there's still a lot of at least social perceptions on that as well.
Absolutely. We were always, back in the day when we were red, we were economically conservative. We were business friendly, mm-hmm. but socially we were always liberal.
Okay.
And I think it's getting better on a lot of fronts though. And as I mentioned, it was we were the 6th most pro-choice state before the legislative session. I am going to hate to see what the rankings are in January when they come out.
We get an A+ from Planned Parenthood.
Oh, yeah, we do.
Good grade. It's the only A+ in our state.
Exactly. We have to be at the top of something.
Yeah. So we're seeing a lot of legislation that is attacking. I don't think there are laws that limit abortion, but there's like an awareness, right? So I remember during the governor's election, there was a law or a prospective law or a proposed law that would remove the need of a doctor to alert a parent if their minor daughter mm-hmm. was seeking an abortion.
Let me explain that. So
Okay.
in the state of Nevada, we do have a law for parental notification for teenagers or younger seeking an abortion. But that was voted on in 1985, and within minutes of it being signed by the governor. Now, and this was like incredibly bipartisan. I think maybe 5 people voted against this law in 1985. Within a day, the Planned Parenthood and the abortionist in Reno filed a lawsuit, and the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals enjoined it so that it has never been enforced.
Okay.
So it's there in the law,
if
but
you
it's
don't
not
do
been
it-
enforced.
Okay.
So your daughters, as young as they are, I mean, if they can get pregnant, they can go get an abortion, and you would never know because there is no requirement.
Which makes
of
total
consent.
sense because they have to still ask permission to use the restroom in school. So,
Yeah.
Right.
so
Yeah.
why wouldn't they be able to get that without me being notified? Or any parent?
Exactly. I mean, so it's such a violation of parental rights. Plus, it puts our daughters in
Mhm.
extreme jeopardy.
Yeah,
Because
then
as you mentioned,
you enable sexual predators.
Yeah.
Because
Absolutely.
I can get rid of the evidence of my sexual crime
absolutely.
without anybody being notified. Do we have I think I know, but do we have legislation that requires doctors to still be the only individuals performing abortion, or can it be in essence the equivalent of like a nurse practitioner?
Okay, so this last session, they passed a law that, first of all, attempted to take the parental notification language out of the law. And thankfully, we fought that back. So it's still there.
Okay.
And
But it's still unenforceable.
at this point, but I think I have a strategy of how we're going to get it done.
Okay.
Because before I die, by golly, this will get done.
By hook or by crook.
And legislators, if you want to get rid of me, parental notification is your
Yeah,
key.
Just do it. I'll just go. I won't live and then drive to Carson every day.
Exactly. This is extortion, I tell you. So
I'm fine with this kind of extortion. This is great.
exactly. I think it's still legal. I don't know though.
In this day,
Visit me in
everything's
prison.
legal.
So, but what this abortion bill did was it eliminated the requirement for a doctor to verify a young girl's age. Now, why is that important? Because then there's a record.
Mhm.
And so if Dr. Bad Guy is aborting an 11-year-old and there is not a report that's made to Child Protective Services, then he could be held responsible
Okay.
a little bit more. They got rid of that. They got rid of the requirement to make sure that a woman is not being coerced. That's good. That's really good.
I went to
that
the ER a week ago and they asked me if I was going to the ER because I was in a domestic violent situation. They legitimately, like, the nurse asked me, she's like, "What are you here for?" And I explained why I was there. And she goes, "Are you here because you're involved in a domestic dispute?" And I looked at her and I was like, "No." No. But so a doctor does, because I mean, you can't take a fart in our state without filling out paperwork over it.
Absolutely.
And now you can go in for because again, I'm wholly ignorant on the medical procedure.
Sure.
An abortion is a gigantic procedure. It's not like,
Yeah, it's not easy, although they'll say it's nothing more than, a dental
yeah,
thing. No, it's not. I mean, it kind of depends on what kind of abortion we're talking about. If it's a medical abortion, it's a drug.
Mhm.
The mom takes the drug at the doctor's office, let's say.
I love that language. I'm sorry to interrupt. We've been saying when women go to get abortions and you keep going back to mom. That's such powerful language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
going to write this down on my imaginary piece of paper.
Not on this
Remember.
table.
Not on this table. Seriously.
I'm
The
sorry.
guy that owns it, I know him.
You'll have domestic violence on your hands. No, so where was I? I got lost.
Medical procedures.
Medical
Okay, so-
yes, the mom.
So the mom takes a drug in the office, and then she goes home and takes another drug and delivers the baby at home. Because the first pill is going to starve the baby of nutrients, and the second pill will expel the baby.
It induces labor.
It induces labor.
So it's like Pitocin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's apparently very, very painful.
At home?
At home. So Kristen Hawkins from Students for Life of America, she coined a chilling term that is so incredibly perfect, and it's the toilet bowl abortion.
Oh God.
And so imagine you've got an 11-year-old girl that goes in and gets this and then goes home and does this, or a 30-year-old woman that's never had a baby before, and she does that. I mean, imagine the scars, the emotional scars that woman or that girl are going to carry around for the rest of
What
their
do
life.
they do once they've delivered this? I'm assuming that the child is stillborn.
Yeah, and when you do this, it makes it seem like it's a much larger baby.
Yeah.
So it would be, it's a small, it's not, they're not supposed to do it past 10 or 12 weeks. But here's the thing, they decriminalized medical abortions in Nevada this time. So there's no longer a criminal penalty associated with somebody other than a doctor distributing RU486.
Is there like a minimum requirement of intelligent education
No. Mm-mm.
for any kind of an abortion,
And
or
I think
just distributing the pill?
That's one of the saddest things ever, because especially women nowadays, because they're brought up in this very, very pro-choice culture, and there is no education, there is no information, so they're told, oh, it's just like a simple dental procedure.
Right.
And then to your point, you have a girl maybe 11 to 14 years old who
Mhm.
goes and does this and then suffers alone because parents
Right.
haven't been notified, and they don't want to tell their parents, and so they suffer alone, that pain and that trauma.
Absolutely. And that's if everything goes right.
Mhm.
But let's say it's not successful. Maybe there's pieces left in there. Maybe this, and let's go to the surgical side now, the abortions that we think of generally, which involve, vacuum aspirators or a number of other things. I am so squeamish. I hate to talk about the procedures too much. So I apologize, and I don't really have the words to explain it. But
They've got the big tongs. They go in and they rip it apart
and
piece
they
by
rip
piece.
piece by piece, or they inject the baby with a chemical to stop its heart. It's it's just every time we seem to stop one kind of abortion, they come up with a more brutal version. So anyway, what happens when your 14-year-old daughter comes home from an abortion and it wasn't a good abortionist and he left an arm or something in there? She can go into sepsis. She can have all manner of problems. And you as the dad, you're going to think, oh, she's got a temperature. Just,
Sleep it off.
Sleep it off.
I'm
Yeah.
the king of the sleep it off
Right.
medication.
Absolutely. And there was a case in California several years back when RU486 first came out, and the girl's name was Holly Patterson. I think she was 19, so obviously an adult. But she went and had RU486 and then went home, and she presented the same thing: flu-like symptoms, a temperature, low-grade temperature, and by the time they took her to the emergency room, she was pretty sick, but she couldn't tell them what had happened to her, and her parents didn't know. And so Holly Patterson died of an RU486 abortion. She was only the first of many. And so women, these feminists, and I have such a lack of respect for women who call themselves feminists and do it on the back of other women by
Like
forcing abortion down their throats.
Like on the dead bodies of
On the
women.
dead bodies of unborn women, number one, and then women who have abortions. But feminists are telling our daughters in our schools in Washoe County and across the nation that this is where you get an abortion. You don't have to tell your parents, and it's super safe. It's criminal.
And it's not that big of a deal, too. It's safe, legal, and rare.
Yeah.
Safely going there.
So I remember at the beginning of I don't remember, I wasn't born, but if I remember correctly, the entire Roe v. Wade the pro-abortion movement came about as a way to save women's lives because so many women, and this is all
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
big lie.
Right.
So many women were getting back alley hanger abortions
Right.
that they were dying by the thousands.
Oh, tens of thousands.
And now we have abortions that the movement is in fact it's creating that apocalypse that they were screaming about back in the 70s. The left is legislating for that to happen now,
and then covering it up. And so I have to. I know you know this. I know you probably both know this, but the tens of thousands of women that died of back alley abortions and hangers and all that kind of stuff was made up by the first president of the National Abortion Rights Action League.
and he came out afterwards and said it was a lie.
And he said it was a lie. And that was Dr. Bernard Nathanson, who, talk about a story of redemption. This man was responsible for tens of thousands of, probably hundreds of thousands of babies that he personally killed. And then all the rest that,
Since then,
yeah, because of his work to start the National Abortion Rights Action League. But he had a radical conversion and then spent the rest of his life trying to make up for that.
didn't
Silent Scream.
the woman
Yeah.
Roe? She
Yeah.
didn't, is her name even Roe? I don't
No, it isn't. It's Norma McCorvey. You want to hear a story about Norma McCorvey?
have at it.
Okay. So I don't know if you guys know, I wasn't always pro-life, right? I was quite on the other side. And so when I was in college, I used to bring speakers on campus. That was my thing. When I was not throwing big kegger parties, I was bringing lectures.
See, I would have done
And-
that in college.
it was good fun. One of the lecturers that I brought was Sarah Weddington, who was the Texas lawyer who brought Roe v. Wade. She successfully argued Roe v. Wade. Big feminist icon.
Mm.
And for me, as a young college student, and then as a young professional, she was a huge role model for me. She was a mentor. And I'd met her at these booking conferences that I used to go to. So I was so excited when I was able to bring her here. And she spoke at UNR, and out in front of her speech were all these crazy pro-lifers. And they were protesting. I couldn't figure out why they were protesting. I thought they were crazy pro-lifers. God has a sense of humor. Those were words that I would live to eat. But so we had this hugely successful lecture, and then that night, a bunch of the students and I took her out to dinner, and we're sitting over dessert, and I just out of the blue said, "So whatever happened to Roe?" And she said, and this was a lovely woman. She was so gracious, Texas accent, looked perfect, great clothes. I mean, this was, I wanted to be like her when I grew up. And she was just so gracious. And then, so I asked her what happened to Roe, and it was like a demon possessed her. I don't know if you've ever seen that where it just changes, a person's face changes. And she said, Norma McCorvey was nothing but a piece of white trash when we picked her up off the streets, and she's nothing but a piece of white trash now.
Wow.
She is pro-life and she's Christian, and she just spat these words out. And I mean, I just was like, whoa, what just happened? So I paid the check and we left. And I never saw Sarah Weddington again. And I have to be honest, I never wanted to see her again. It was so vitriolic.
Mm-hmm.
And because the whole night had been about how she was about women's rights and helping women. So years go by, I have my radical conversion, and suddenly I'm pro-life, and suddenly I'm, bringing speakers. And who do I bring but Norma McCorvey? So she comes and speaks at a rally in Reno, and then she spoke at Catholic Professional Business Group. And I was sitting there afterwards with her, and I was like, so whatever happened to Sarah Weddington? And her face changed, but it just was like, it melted, into kind of love, and she said, she was not a nice woman. She didn't treat me well, but I hear she has breast cancer, and I pray for her every day.
Wow.
And I was like, that right there. That's women's empowerment. We pray for each other. We lift each other up. We want the best for each other, regardless of what we believe. If we disagree or we agree, that woman understood that the person who ruined her life needed prayer. I mean, that's Norma. Norma passed away a couple of years ago, and truly one of the most tortured souls I've ever seen. She was not a great speaker. She was raw. I mean, it was emotion like you have never seen, because she walked around bearing the lives, 50 million lives. Mm-hmm. I'm responsible for it, she would say. And even though she knew that Jesus Christ is our Redeemer and forgives all, and even though she worked so hard up until her dying breath to change this horrible law, she struggled every single day. She had demons like you wouldn't believe, but she found Jesus. She became Catholic, and she had a lot of good people praying for her and helping her. But she had a rough, tough life, and one I wouldn't wish on anybody.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So
rough.
Conversation stopper.
Yeah, seriously. Okay, so on to a lighter note.
Sorry about that. And I like to talk. I'm sorry.
Okay, so we're looking at what legislation is coming down the road for us.
Yeah.
So they're attempting to get rid of parental notification. That didn't happen.
Right.
They're going to, if nothing else, the left is determined, and by any means they will continue. And I think it's not a good thing, but it is what they are. So
absolutely,
they didn't get this go round. Next go round, what are we looking at? So it's 2019 right now. 2020 is hop, skip, and a jump away.
And what is it? Okay, so my usual thing. Everybody needs to be registered to vote. You need to register to vote as Republicans because it's the only party that has it in the platform, and you can vote on the best pro-lifer, so that the best pro-lifer can then make it against whoever the forces of evil are.
For people that don't know, in our state, if you're not registered under that party, you can't vote in their primary.
Absolutely. Yep. So
like,
that applies to only the states with
that issue,
closed primaries.
Right. So that's why obviously I have no problem, being political by any stretch. I'm not saying if you're a libertarian, you need to identify as a Republican. But if you live in the state of Nevada and you don't like abortion,
you need to be trans-party.
You need to, yes.
You need to be party fluid.
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm polymorphic in my political affiliations. So we need to identify as Republican. We need to be registered as Republicans.
Absolutely, because then you can vote for as many people as possible.
And we can try, because I feel that the conservative movement has been slightly stepping away from the abortion issue because it's so hot.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, it's like, Absolutely. It's one of those things like and this is the other thing that I think Democrats, or not just Democrats, but the left do so well, is the way that they talk about any issue. They speak as if they are and have always been 100% on the side of science and morals about that issue. And you wouldn't even think about claiming to not be doing that.
You must be some sort of religious freak. Like if you think a blob of tissue with eyes, nose, and a mouth,
its
and
own
different
unique
genetic
DNA is a baby.
Yeah, exactly. Is a baby. That's crazy.
Yeah, whatever.
Crazy talk.
It could come out a dog. But in our state, I think there's tougher laws against killing dogs than humans.
Absolutely.
But so you have to be registered as a Republican, so that way when we pick and vote for the candidates, that we pick pro-life candidates and not just
pro-life
fiscally conservative.
That can win. I mean, you got to have both.
That's a hard thing.
It's a hard thing. And so what that means is even before that, we need to find candidates. That's
who's
the
willing
problem.
to go through the gauntlet of
I know.
Election.
Exactly. I mean, I like you guys too much to ask you to do it, but because to talk about a sacrifice, Um,
I mean,
But-
I've run through Reno naked enough times. I don't need to do it in the news.
exactly. But so that's we've got to have legislators. We've got to have the votes in the state houses. We're not going to have a Senate race here in Nevada. We'll have congressional races.
Okay.
There are 4 congressional districts in Nevada, 1 in Washoe County, and a bunch of the state, and then the other 3 are Clark and the rest of the state.
Mhm.
So we need to win, and and here are the words that I never thought I would say. We got to vote for President Trump because he's the most pro-life president we have ever had. Ever.
It's amazing.
I mean, Ronald Reagan, I never thought somebody could beat him. But this man not only says he's going to do something, but he actually does it. And then, like the battered wife, I think, I've always voted for the pro-life guy and expecting that he's just going to cheat on me again. So it's kind of a little weird to have a politician who says he's
Actually
going to do it, and then he saves babies.
I wish he would just stop talking.
So
Most of the time, I love when he talks because he's so unpredictable. But when he comes out again, like,
yeah, I can't.
I'm not a big Trump fan. I voted for him. I'll vote for him again only
Yeah.
because I think what he's doing is great. But when he talks pro-life, it's
It's
incredible.
magical.
It is.
The
Um,
fact that he said on the national stage, took Hillary Clinton on.
Oh God.
It was beautiful. I mean, I've never seen it. I'm used to everybody dancing around it, including me sometimes,
Yeah.
wanting to get the win. Sometimes I'm not, as bold as he was. And when he said it, I was like, holy smokes, he said that. He's so going to lose. And by golly, he won.
So
there
do
you go. I'm
do you
sorry.
think no? So I like again.
So real fast, I do have one question though. So
Yeah.
what pro-life measures and legislation has this presidency pushed through or enacted
Absolutely.
that we have not seen before?
The Mexico City policy.
Mhm.
That was
Oh, I'm so glad that's gone.
right. And not only did he implement that again, but he widened it to much further than it's ever been before, because it was he eliminated funding that we give to other countries
Mhm.
for family planning, and said it can't. Yeah, I know family planning. So.
Gotta throw up those.
So the Mexico City policy does not allow that money to go to agencies that promote or perform abortions,
Radical.
because we've been exporting death to
Mhm.
especially Central America and African countries. Which, could you be more racist?
Oh man.
I mean, we don't do that.
But
Well, no,
look
it's
at
in line
the
with Margaret
foundation.
Sanger.
Yeah, look at the foundation of Planned Parenthood
Absolutely.
in the 20s.
Absolutely, but don't
It's
get
so funny that Donald Trump cuts off money to pro-abortion groups, but the USCCB doesn't.
right. Oh,
No, but the way
Whoops.
the way that they erase it now is that third wave feminists are like, well, she had some problematic views. Yeah, I'll say.
holy
You
smokes.
guys talk about Thomas Jefferson's problematic views as well,
Right.
but
I mean, can you imagine what it's going to be like 30 years from now when they start pulling the statues down of everybody
Yeah.
who was
Everybody who says
involved in
anything
this
about everything.
genocide?
mhm.
Yeah, because science is on our
God
side.
willing. God willing. Yeah, that's the one thing that
Yeah, I'm gonna use air quotes on
because
science because science is so.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a friend at work who's very very pro-choice. He's very very far on the left, and one of the things that we've always talked about, he's always been like, well, when we find life on Mars, and I'm like, why are we looking for life on Mars? There's life here that we just cast away. Like, do you think that is going to anything but bolster my side of the argument? You find a single cell organism in outer space, you call it life. Well, there's a multi-celled organism that's growing inside of my wife that you're saying is not a life. So how I want to see the mental gymnastics that you have to go through to try to make that jive.
Absolutely. What does he say?
That's what everybody says when you do that.
Exactly.
Okay, so
I keep getting off topic. You want to know
No,
about
no,
the
no.
legislation? I'll tell you what they're exporting from Nevada
okay,
and California. They are.
because it's California. Okay, Nevada doesn't really have unique and individually creative ideas. We just import from California.
But sometimes we improve on them.
Yeah, and they're junk, and then we go to the next level, which I think is the dangerous thing. So it took California, I'm 32 now. I remember California evolving over my entire life, and it was slow.
Mhm.
It took 30 years that I can remember for them to get as far to the left as they did. And it's taken Nevada 6 years.
Absolutely.
So because again, they're good at learning,
Mhm.
good on them, but they learn from the mistakes of the other big states, and then
Absolutely.
they cut out those gigantic issues, those huge setbacks, and they have more creative wording, they have more creative legislators, and they have the experience and the roadmap of a 30-year, 40-year
Mhm.
state like California. So California takes 50 years, 40 years, whatever. Nevada does it in 6, and then we export
Yes.
in one cycle to the next state.
Absolutely. And that's I think Nevada is the breeding ground and the laboratory for the Democratic Party. They come up with ideas here and then they take them elsewhere. You're exactly right. And
My wife is going to have a heart attack when she hears that line.
I'm so sorry I said it.
Yeah, I was right.
Exactly. So what they're exporting from here is going to be the decriminalization of abortion laws, so that every state may or may not have these abortion laws, but there's no penalties associated. So therefore, it just doesn't really exist.
It doesn't matter.
It's just words on a piece of paper.
Okay.
Kind of like parental consent in our state right now.
Absolutely. And there's a big push for mail order RU 486, the medical abortions.
Okay.
And they're trying to make that legal or decriminalized, either one, which means your little girl is not even gonna have to go to a doctor to get it, or doctor. She can just get it from Amazon.
Shipped to a friend's house.
Yeah, absolutely. Or an abusive pimp,
Yeah.
or the predator next door, whatever it is.
Well, I'm like super mad right now.
Yeah, I know.
Thank the Lord I homeschool. Thank you.
Exactly. And
So mail order RU 840
486.
486. So RU 486
Absolutely, yeah.
is the abortion pill.
Right, not to be confused with morning after
Plan B
or
pills.
Plan B pills,
Okay.
which are just a high dose of hormones. Not good for you. And a much earlier abortion.
Okay.
Those are like, within 48 hours, basically.
So, because I like playing the politics, game,
Sure.
right? If I was having a discussion with a leftist and they were pro-abortion and they were saying what happens in the case of rape, and I say I don't care what you do so long as if a baby was created, so an egg was fertilized, you don't kill that. What, if anything, is there for a woman who is raped that she can take that doesn't abort a baby but prevents the fertilization of an egg? Is there anything out there that we can say, hey, this is what we should be arming clinics and ERs and the police and firefighters and EMTs with in the case of a rape, where they receive it, instead of it being here's an abortifacient, here is this which just prevents the fertilization? Because as a Catholic, I don't think two wrongs make a right. So you were raped, that's absolutely horrible, but you killing somebody else is like me getting robbed and then shooting him.
Right.
You had nothing to do with the crime.
Absolutely.
That affected
now there
me.
are two
Now
victims.
there's two victims, right?
Right.
So what can we say, hey, like there is this, instead of us saying, like make better decisions and have a better support system, like all of those are good,
right?
But those aren't nice, and that's not, that shuts conversation down.
Absolutely.
What we need to have are like provocative and effective alternatives to murder.
Absolutely.
So is there something? So long.
Well, basically the morning after pill is what is being used for that.
Okay.
But I mean, I don't know how I feel about that. And I don't feel like I am qualified to know, there's some discussion about whether it's an abortifacient or not. So I don't know how I would answer that. But the thing about a woman who is raped is that, first of all, our society doesn't even take a breath to help her with the incredible violation she just
We're
encountered.
forcing another one on her.
Yeah, and it's just, I mean, and basically telling her that this is going to make everything better. Then when it doesn't, she's got the natural feelings that you have when you're raped, which unfortunately doesn't make sense, but women generally feel, men who are raped, oftentimes feel like they had something to do with it. I could have done something different if, and this wouldn't have happened. There's some blame that I have.
Mhm.
Oftentimes women feel that way. Then you add to that the realization that happens at some point when she realizes, and I killed my baby who had nothing to do with this. We're not helping her when we're doing that. And we're not supporting her in the best way, because studies show that women who choose to carry the pregnancy and either put it up for adoption or keep the baby are oftentimes more, they're mentally better than those who make the other choice.
Okay.
But the amount of pressure that's on a woman in that situation is huge. Everybody expects her
To get an abortion.
to get an abortion. And so as she carries that baby, everybody just encourages her. And, quite honestly, first of all, rapes often do not result in a pregnancy. And when it does, the percentage of women who have abortions is actually pretty small.
It's a very small number.
It's a very
the
small
rape
number.
incest number is like less than a single
Mhm.
percent.
Absolutely.
So
And so
using
we're
we're
basing
using the
law.
fringe
Yeah,
to
Mhm.
cover
Right.
the masses, which is
And-
an idiotic way, but it's a very effective,
it's their
provocative.
best.
Yeah,
It's their best argument. Absolutely.
Because then it makes you sound like the heartless
Absolutely.
jerk.
yeah,
Well, you want to force more pain and suffering.
yeah.
but,
You
and
want to
then
rape her again,
But then to your point, because the left is so good at arguing the emotion behind it,
Mhm.
and so often the right tries to argue from the logic perspective, but when you're talking about a woman that's been violated,
Right.
people don't want to hear the logic, they want to hear the emotion.
Absolutely. And so you have to lead with that. I
Mhm.
mean, you have to address the most important thing for that woman right then is to make sure she's okay, to make sure she is in a place where perhaps that rapist can get caught
Mhm.
and taken off the street. Because here's the thing, that's oftentimes that's the solution, and that is the end of the solution.
Mhm.
And so that rapist goes on and
Mhm.
continues to assault and abuse.
Okay.
Yeah, now another kind
No, like, this is really good. So we get it a lot on our page. When we put out something pro-life, we always get the like the naysayers, like we're wrong, we hate women, all of these things. So I thought we could do a couple, like, if you were the pro-life
Mhm.
advocate involved in that debate, how would you go about it?
Okay.
Because a lot of kids, they see Students for Life, March for Life, all of these amazing and really popular YouTube, Instagram, Facebook pages, and they put out really good 30-second clips about like, this is why aborting a baby after rape is wrong.
Right.
But that's 30 seconds, and a lot of people don't get like a good in-depth
Right.
piece on it. So the one that I get the most is because I have a penis, which I do. Shocker.
Didn't want to assume.
It's okay. It's mine.
It's a woman's though.
It's a woman's penis, right? I'm a lesbian stuck in a man's body, which has now actually legitimately taken shape, which I just think is so great. So my uterus, my choice. You don't
Yeah.
have a uterus. You can't tell me what to do with it.
Okay. So first of all, this is such an interesting problem as a society that we've gotten ourselves into, because it does take two to
Mhm.
create a baby. And if I get pregnant and the father wants to get rid of the baby, but I don't. He has no right to make me get rid of the baby. But if I decide I want to keep the baby, he has to pay.
Mm-hmm.
So number one, that sets up a conflict that can be very abusive.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember what the percentage is, but over 60% of women who have abortions are coerced by somebody close to them, whether it's a husband, brother, or parent. That I get off topic a lot. I'm sorry. The other thing is, so men should be involved in this, obviously, because it is their child. And when a baby is lost, two people, a mom and a dad, lose that baby. And very little is done for the dads who've lost babies. It's like this thing we ignore. But there is every bit as much pain because at the end of the day, we have a biological imperative to take care of our children.
Mm-hmm.
And the pain of a man who can't take care of his child is a deep wound. So yeah, you do have the right to say something about it, because also you are a brother, you are a husband, you are a father, you have women all throughout your life, and you have to protect them, and you have to advocate for them, whether they're in the womb or out of the womb.
Okay. So I'm gonna put my liberal hat on.
Do it.
I'm gonna start pushing back. But I don't have a uterus,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I don't actually have to do any physical work. Like creating a baby actually takes caloric, like an actual number of calories, right? So you have to do work as a woman to make a baby. The man doesn't have to do anything. Because he doesn't have to do anything other than 20 seconds of fun time at the beginning, he's got nothing else involved in the process. So why should he force a woman to do something with her body? Like how do we square that where he doesn't actually have to carry the baby? He doesn't have to feed it. He doesn't have to eat. He doesn't have to eat extra. He doesn't have to pay for the extra food because now I'm eating for two. Oh, right. There's that whole funny line. He doesn't have to walk around and be careful about what he can't go smoke, right? The guy can do whatever he wants, whereas the woman has to do all the work and then she's got to deliver the baby. Because she has all of that effort, why don't we just let her make those decisions and he's completely out of it? Because he's not actually doing anything. Like,
Right.
He's not. So he's not doing anything. So why do we let men legislate, in essence, childbearing slavery onto a woman for 40 weeks?
Yeah.
Like how can you say that that a man has any right to say that if he's not doing any of the work? Like it's not like 5 months in, the woman's like, here, you do the rest. And then it's not just 40 weeks. There's breastfeeding. There's all of the other things that a mother has to do for her newborn child that a man is ill-equipped to do. So there's all of this labor. Why do men get a right to any of that? Because it's not their labor.
Well, it's like any human rights issue. We have two humans involved in this. And, I may be driving down the road and some person is beating the crap out of their kid. And I have an imperative sometimes. I mean, I'm not talking spanking, but, somebody's being hurt. It doesn't have anything to do with me. It doesn't hurt me. I don't have to take this kid home afterwards. But it's a human. And so we're meant to stand up for the weakest among us, and especially men. Now, as a woman, I'm probably going to say, number one, you said something that kind of like triggered me. And that was that.
It's a safe space, don't worry.
Exactly. And that's that men are legislating this. No, it's not. It's men and women. This is a society that created this problem, and this is a society that's fixing it. And you're entitled to your opinion on everything, just like I am. And at the end of the day, the pro-life movement, it's run by women. I mean, you're hard pressed to find a man in charge of any pro-life organization
Okay.
because they've been successful at silencing you guys. I don't think that's right. But I do think, on the other hand, putting my political hat on, a lot of times it's more effective for a woman to say it for that very reason.
Okay.
And so I think it's best. I think one of the best ways to push the point is to just keep asking questions. So you're not saying anything. You're just saying, well, so what is it if it's not a life? Well, why is it okay to kill somebody because they're smaller or because of where their environment? That's a little bit more effective. I think whenever we're in those tussles, whether it's online or, at our camp or anywhere, you've got a couple of different audiences that you have to be thinking about. I may be arguing with Vince and he's an idiot. And I know that
I agree.
I know. We talked about this earlier.
Yeah.
You weren't here.
No, I was. I was just standing quietly in the corner with my back turned.
Oh. I heard a moaning over there. I didn't know what it was. I thought it was just the toilet running, but now I know.
So Vince is partly my audience, but everybody standing around Vince is the rest of the audience. And so, you tried to change his mind, but you're also trying to either give adequate ammunition to the person standing behind them for the next time they have to make that, or you're changing somebody's mind. And also, most likely, you're changing Vince's.
So that's what I've always. So again, I don't hold any of the things I just said to be true because they're all. They're
absolutely.
all crap.
Yeah,
I'm making sure that somebody doesn't just tune in and they're like, "What?
Catholic Guardians,
Another star
review."
Who is that guy?
No review though. If you have the balls to get up and proclaim that we should be able to kill anybody, I don't think there's a lot that people can do to debate you out of that in 90 minutes.
No.
But what I do think, and this is the great thing about the podcast platform, the YouTube, and the Instagram, is I'll actually get into those debates with people, not because I actually think I'm going to change their mind, but there's hundreds and thousands of other people who are going to look at that thread, read it,
and go back and watch and
get
absolutely.
that information. So I didn't have, there was not a singular person that led me to the pro-life movement in as much as the apologetics and debating goes. I watched a handful of pro-life debates 30 or 40 times.
Really?
I watched the woman lawyer from the ACLU.
Nadine
Strauss, whatever her name is.
Yeah.
And she debates the guy who presents the sled format.
Is it Scott Klusendorf?
It is.
Okay, yeah.
So they have like a 3-hour debate. And
I need to go watch it.
I watched it probably 20 times.
Uh-huh.
Right? Because his sled, it's size,
location. Level of...
I think D is dependency.
Yes.
So
environment.
So size, location, environment, and level of dependency. I'm probably massacring it, but it's 4 things that you can debate a pro-choicer on or a pro-abortion person on, that it just gets really difficult to do when you individualize each part of the debate, right?
Right.
Like if you're standing there, but you're standing there, can I kill you? Well, no. I'm like, well, if you're 6 inches taller or shorter, can I kill you? No. So, but it's important because he was never going to change her mind and she was never going to change his. And this is the beautiful thing that I think we've really lost track of, is they had that entire debate. Again, it was like 3 hours long in the most civil and respectful manner ever.
Absolutely.
And people like me, who I knew I was pro-life, but I didn't know how to debate it other than stop being a piece of wanting to kill people.
Right.
Right. Like that's basically my debate tactic for a long time.
Right.
But watching that debate, they weren't going to change each other's minds, but they were changing everybody else's minds in the audience and on the internet. So a lot of the times I think we get so frustrated because we're, I want this to come to a conclusion.
Right. We all, especially when we first join the movement, we all think there's a silver bullet, that because
a one-liner.
Absolutely. And because when the magnitude of the horror of abortion hits you finally, when the scales come off your eyes, you can't believe that somebody hasn't figured out a way to stop this genocide now. And so you're sitting there, I know this happened to me. I sat and I thought, and by golly, I came up with the silver bullet, and I marched into Janine Hansen's office, and I marched into Pat Glenn's office, who had been doing it since 1968, and said, this is the way we're going to do it. And they both said, okay, go ahead, go give it a try. Go get him, Tiger. And it's going to take everybody going through that, but it is at the end of the day, we have to change hearts and minds.
Mm-hmm.
And then we will change laws.